Hello, welcome to my talk. How I save myself 30 minutes a day using Ansible. Now, in a recent Gartner report, 70% of Gartner's clients said they still use manual CLI-based changes as the primary mechanism for network configurations. 70% of clients. In the same report, they also believe that organizations that automate 70% of their network configurations will reduce the number of unplanned network outages by more than half, compared to those that automate less than 30%. We are hearing every single day as network engineers that we should automate. We should treat our network as code, and we should think more like developers. But where do you start? So, who am I? My name is Roger Perkin. I am CCIE number 50,038. I'm a network and security consultant currently working for Softcat in the UK. Now, I thought to myself, I need to learn network automation. I need to get into this. So, as everyone says, start with something simple. So I installed Ansible on my laptop and started with a simple playbook that did a backup of the configuration file. So that was brilliant. The playbook ran, it did a backup, I had a config file backed up. The only problem with that is that every time I did the backup it was overwriting it. So I then evolved that playbook to create a date-based folders for backups. That was an automated process that did that. That saved me creating folders and changing the file structure of where the playbooks would save the files. Then I extended that playbook a bit more so it would run some show commands and capture the output. So when we'd stage a network environment and we had things running, or when we left a network at a site, we could run this playbook and it would give me a moment in time of a show output from all the devices that we'd left. Now this is something that I would normally do, but it would be a manual task that I'd have to do on every single device. And then finally, once we've got all the devices in the inventory file, we're running show commands, we're capturing the backups. The final thing that I needed to do was to be able to push configuration to all these devices. Now this is something else that Ansible is really good at, is pushing configuration. So I created another custom playbook that pushed either some text files, just some random commands that we need to push, or a whole templated config. So that was what I needed to do. Now, with that said, let's go into a live demo. So, hopefully this is going to do the job. So I run my Ansible on my laptop. So I'm running VMware workstation on the laptop, and I then have an Ubuntu install, and on there I've got Ansible 2.7.5 installed, and I also use Visual Studio Code as my editor. Now I will say at this point in time that I am not a Linux expert. I am not a developer. Everything I've done is enough to get me by, but I'm doing okay so far. So if any of you see anything that you go, no, don't do it like that, please let me know afterwards, because I'll be always keen to improve my processes. So let's put an Ansible Meetup folder here, and let's go through play one. So this is the first playbook I ever wrote, and this is going to back up my CSR routers. We're using the IOS command module, and all it does is runs the show run command on every device, and then it saves that show run into the backups folder, and then I use the inventory hostname -backup to name those backups. So in the backups folder here currently, let's just delete all of this just so we start from scratch. So that backups folder is empty. So if we skip over to the command line, let's run that first playbook. And what that does, as I said, no, it's not play, it's play one. This just runs a simple backup on those 3 devices and saves it into the backups folder. So we should see this backups folder here populate. Now I'm running this to 3 cloud services routers on my home lab, so I'm not sure how quick it's going to be. Ticking over. So as a network consultant, I predominantly stage large network environments, and we would stage these devices, and at the end of the day I would like to just take a snapshot of these configs. Now this could be 10 devices, it could be 60 devices, it could be 100 devices, but they're all sat there, and I would previously have connected to each device with a console cable if we're still there or on the management network, and just do a show run, copy paste, name the file. So just this one playbook was saving me 10 minutes a day at least on my end of day tasks that I had to do. So I've just run this and run it. So now here we go, this is saving the output to backups. And if we go back to the backups folder, you can see now this is populating with CSR1 backup, and here's the configuration on that router. So that's great. But this, every time I run that, this was just overwrite the file. So then I expanded that playbook, so this is now play 2. What this is doing is it runs a little job up here which just pulls the Ansible date time, and it stores the date time group as a fact. So we set a fact, which is the Ansible date and time. So I've now got a fact stored within Ansible called DTG, which I can reference in all of the tasks I'm performing down here. So this creates a directory with the file module, and it's called hostfiles.localhost.dtg. So what this is doing is just simply creating me a folder with today's date. So let's run that one. And this does the same thing, but will create me a new folder for every day that I run this playbook. So another task that I was creating folders for every day, I was changing the location of where the backups would go. So this has now created the directory, and it's created it for today's date. And now I'm back onto the show run again. So if we skip back into my studio code, I've got now a folder here. This is 2019-0130, and within that folder, this is where all the backups are going to drop. So that was brilliant. That's playbook 2. This is working fine. I'm backing up my configs, no questions, no problems. So the next thing I want to do is to run some arbitrary commands on the devices. So here we go. These 3 have all popped in now. So I've now got the config in here, but with the date and a timestamp on it, and this would run once a day. So I only needed a once a day snapshot of that config. So the next one, play 3, I then wanted to run some show commands. So we go further down the playbook, and we're using the iOS command module, and I set some variables here, and this was my command list. So these are all the various show commands that I'd like to run. I comment them out, the ones that I don't want, and the ones that I wanted to run I would uncomment. And then what this does is it runs those, so it loops through this, runs the show commands, and puts everything together into a single file with the template module. So I've got a little template down here. This one just says for the command in the command list, show the output and just loop around each command. So this will just say output for show commands for the specific router name, and it'll have all the output in there. So let's run playbook 3. So this is now going to, again, this will create the folder, but it doesn't need to be created. This is idempotent, so we've got the folder here already. It's getting the date and time, storing the date and time, creates a directory, doesn't need to, it's there already. And then it's going to, this one takes the backup, so we are repeating ourselves a little bit. So this is doing the backup, but then further down the play, it's now running all these show commands and saving them in this folder. So I will have now in this folder shortly the show outputs. So it's going to be so it's show output.txt, which is going to be that one. So that's my 3 playbooks, and this is the playbook that probably saved me about 30 minutes a day just doing all these tasks manually whenever I was doing it. But I'd come to the end of the day, press go, and away it went. This is fantastic. But now I wanted to use this during the day in helping configure. So I created this very simple playbook, another one. So this is going to push config files using the IOS config module. And what it's doing here is it's going to say I'm going to push the config that lives in the configs folder with the specific router name. Now, in this configs folder, as you can see, I don't actually have any configuration files yet, so we're going to generate them. And got this folder structure here within templates, and we've got a main task which is going to generate the configuration files. It's going to pick this Ginger2 template and it's going to split it into the configs folder. The Ginger2 template is the Cisco's router configuration, and then with every item that I want to pass in, these have got item.specific username, password, hostname, loopback1 IP, etc. And then down in the variables file, we've got the main.yaml file, which contains all the IP information and all the information I want to put into those configs. So this is still running the show output. That's still running, but you can see up here, I currently haven't got my show output yet. So when this populates, we'll get the show output. And then I'll run the templating playbook, which will create me my router configs, and then we'll push those configs over to the device. So this is putting all the files together into one nice text file. Right. So now I've got the show output, and this is the output from show commands for CSR1. I've got the show clock, show users, and show IP interface brief. Now I did expand this to have OSPF neighbors, BGP neighbors, all that kind of thing. So I've got a moment in time of what happens there. So let's skip over now to the templates folder and let's create those router configurations. So in here, let's tree that so you can see it. All I need to do is run the Ansible playbook site.yml. And this is generating the configuration files based on that Ginger2 template. So now if I jump back into my configurations in my configs folder, I've now got 3 extra files, CSR1, and this contains the hostname CSR1 loopback1 with an IP address of 111. That one's populated that one with 222. So now I've got the configuration files, and the final thing to do is to push those configuration files to the devices with the push.yml. What this is going to do now, whoops, that will now push the 3 config files that I had configured via the templating module and push them to all the devices. And that, in a very brief way, is how I save myself 30 minutes a day as a network engineer. So we've done the demo. Yeah, that's what it knows. So what next? So I need to expand on Ginger and template configurations. I definitely need to start using Git for source control of the configs and the playbooks. And I am looking into more zero-touch provisioning so we can actually automate the process even further. If you want to find out more about me, I do write on my website, rogerperkin.co.uk. If you Google a few Ansible related terms, you might see me pop up. So something I'm quite proud of at the moment is if you Google Ansible backup Cisco config, my post comes up number 1 for that, which is pretty cool. Yeah, there's a few of them. I tweet Roger N. Perkin on Twitter, and the GitHub repository will have all these playbooks in. So this is github.com/Roger Perkin. That will have all the playbooks that you can download and use for your own use. I do actually, thank you. I do actually have a training course as well, which you can look at. That's it.